Welcome to our Everything You Wanted to Know About Rapid Testing webinar, and now you get to ask. This session is being recorded, so if you need it later to show to your employees or to share to another business owner, please feel free, we'll send you the link. I'm Nora Fountain, Executive Director of the Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce. Our chamber is just one of 5 chambers distributing free rapid tests across Muskoka and Orillia. As you can see on our panel, we also have Brenda Rhodes of the Bracebridge Chamber of Commerce, give a wave, Kelly Haywood of Huntsville Lake of Bays, and she's also our behind the scenes technical producer this evening. Sandy Lockhart this afternoon. Sandy Lockhart will also be joining us a little bit later. And we have a special guest that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So together with the help of the Orillia Chamber, we've formed a distribution partnership to get rapid tests out to as many employers and employees across Muskoka. So why are we doing this? It's really simple. Early detection of infection is key to stopping the spread of COVID-19. It's key to keeping our workplaces and loved ones safer and to reopening our economy. We all want to do that. So thank you for helping us make that happen. It is my pleasure to introduce you to one of the key people who made this program possible for us. Greg DeRoche is with the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Together with the Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber, Greg was selected to run the first rapid testing program in Canada. The Cambridge Chamber is a lot bigger than us and one of the largest chambers in Canada, is one of only 3 chambers in Canada to be recognized with a World Chamber Award. And Greg recently won yet another award for the Rapid Test Pilot. Greg, can you can you tell us how the program was embraced and how it's worked out in your community?
It's actually almost emotional. Because we did it as a program where we thought, we have to find a way to offer more tools to our local businesses so that they can either feel confidence in their operation and that they're keeping people safe, but more importantly, that they could demonstrate to the powers that be that the workplaces weren't the real problem, and that workplaces should be open and that we can open safely if we have the tools available. And, I can tell you that what shocked me in the very beginning was having so many emotional business owners come in and say that this is as much a mental health tool as it is a health tool. Because my employees now are first of all recognizing that I'm doing everything I possibly can do to keep them safe and their families safe. But more importantly, it's raising the bar on their whole emotional compass at work. They're happier, they're feeling more comfortable. It's taking a lot of stress away from them. And, one said to me, even if these were placebo tests, it's doing its job to keep the mental framework of my employees in check. And that's been a struggle for me throughout the year as well. So, I think from our perspective, when we started down this road, it looked to be a challenge that I wouldn't want to share with any of my colleagues or friends in the chamber world. But we took out some of those barriers and moved it along. And I think it's probably, as Perrin Beatty from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce has said to us recently, it's probably the single most important thing chambers of commerce have done for businesses in his recent memory.
Thank you for that. Now, I'm curious, just how many tests did you and Kitchener-Waterloo get out during that pilot time? How many were out there?
Well, it was really funny because we had no idea. You put something out on social media or through the media and you say, well, you can have these kits and, you can screen. There was obviously hesitancy. There was hesitancy here in our own office. When I brought in the very first box and I said to my staff, hey, come on over here, I want you to try this. And they weren't sure they wanted the answer. And I said, well, wait a minute. I just took the test and I'm negative. I want the answer from you. I want your answer because that's going to keep me safer or feeling better about it. And so there was some hesitancy and we thought, well, we'll do, a couple thousand kits maybe in the first week or so. We launched on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. We opened our website up. By 10:15, we had 3,200 kits on the floor here. By 10:15, they were all spoken for. And I had to make an emergency rush to my friends and colleagues up at Communitech in Kitchener and steal 17,000 out of their hidden stash so that we could get through the end of the week. We have now distributed, I think we're in our 6th week or at the end of our 6th week. We've now distributed 300,000 kits, and we're getting 70,000 reports on a Friday of screenings throughout the region of Waterloo.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That's we've experienced that too, where we've had to share between ourselves because they're going out the door so fast. Now, I'd like to take a moment and just share a couple of key screens just to get us in the Q&A frame of mind before I introduce our other special guest. So these screens, and you're seeing my favorite one first, come to us from the Creative Destruction Lab. And I have to thank one of our chamber members and friend, Gareth Seltzer, who has helped connect us to the people at CDL and one of their founders, Melinda Rogers. They've been really helpful in guiding us through all of this. So the first question we always get is, how is this going to protect my business? So that's an easy one. The workplace rapid screening system reduces your likelihood of a shutdown due to an outbreak. That's what we don't want to ever see happen. How does it protect employees? It adds an extra layer of protection for your employees against COVID-19 exposure. They're safer at work and less likely to bring the virus home with them. And I can't stress this strongly enough. Lots of discussions with Dr. Gardner from our health unit. This does not replace vaccination. Keep vaccinating. We need to get everybody vaccinated as quickly as possible so we can get to those provincial thresholds. But this is another important layer of protection. This is my favorite slide. So this shows you basically how if an infectious employee comes in, and when we're talking infectious, asymptomatic, they're not showing any symptoms, because if they're showing any symptoms, you're not even going to let them in the door. You're going to follow your regular protocols. But so this person comes in and chats with these other. We know now from the data that's coming out that that one person could infect 2.6, almost 3 more. See these other 3 circles? They're coming in contact. And before you know it, you have an outbreak. Now, if you look at workplace with a rapid screening system, I mean, it seems so simple, but it's kind of, I find it helpful to see it in this way, that this person comes in. In some companies, I even know larger companies are actually having people screen at home before they even get in the door, but our guidelines right now are come to the workplace, we'll screen you there. So that person comes into the door and they're screened and they have a positive. So we send them home. So that person isolates. What happens up here? They haven't infected the workplace. So this may seem really common sense and simple, but I thought it might be good to take a look at an illustration of how it works. You're really going to stop it from coming into your workplace and stop community spread across the board. Still, there are lots of questions. Our panel today, if you're just joining us, includes Greg. As I said, his chamber was the first in Canada to roll out rapid testing, and he's with the Cambridge Chamber. Also, Dr. Elaine Chin, who is a workplace wellness expert, a best-selling author, a Muskoka lover and my friend, and also founder of Executive Health and Innovation Health Group. So welcome, Elaine. We're going to dive in. Big one. We're getting it across the board. I can't get my employees to do this. What do I do to get them on board? And I think both of us can answer that. So Greg, I'm going to toss it to you first. I'm sure you got that question too. How did you answer it?
I don't think you have to worry too much about it, because I can tell you peer pressure takes over very, very quickly. I've had a number of employers say to me, only about 50% of my employees want to do the screening. What do I do to get the other 50%? I said, don't worry about it. The 50% that want to do the screening will take care of getting the other 50% to screen every single day. And that's happened in every single case, because when someone screens and they say, I've taken the initiative to go ahead, my employer's provided me this, I'm negative, I feel comfortable. But when they turn to their colleague next to them and say, did you screen today? And they say, no, I'm not, I don't want to do that. Well, all of a sudden, well, don't have lunch with me and stay as far away from me as you can. All of a sudden, the isolation factor comes in. And maybe that's scary for some people. You think, well, you don't want employees to be bickering back and forth, but it doesn't have to be harsh. And it's very soft in most cases. And I haven't seen one company yet that's introduced it that hasn't got to 100% participation within the first week of screening.
And we're early on this too. Like ours have only been screening for the past week or so, but Elaine, beyond peer pressure, like Greg describes, would you have words for assurances or things that a message that you would want our employers to say to their employees?
Yes, thank you for the invitation. Nora is very generous. It's a best-selling book because Nora edited it and made me sound really good. So that's the history behind our relationship. And so thank you, Nora, for that, because at the time when I met her, I said, I hate writing, and now I'm on to my second book without her help. So that's exciting too. Thank you for inviting me. This is a very important topic. I have been a personalized medicine physician in Toronto. It's actually past 30 years that I've been practicing, and it's been a very difficult time for all of us. And rapid tests have been looked at in a negative way because it has not been widely adopted and referenced by the medical community because we've not had experience with it. So doctors and public health officials love to use what they know how to use. So if you ever have been in a hospital, if a surgeon uses a certain suture and you change the brand on them, they go berserk. And it's a suture is a suture. So what people have gotten used to is the gold standard is the PCR test. Now, doctors also hate to say, well, we weren't that right, because we now know, and I'm sure you've heard, people who test positive 3 months after they've been sick and they've recovered. Makes no sense, right? And we now know no one gets retested again after they've had COVID, right? Like they just tell you to go away, right? And the rapid tests were not adopted as a gold standard, and therefore people assumed that that was the way to go. And if I had 20/20 hindsight, if I ran the COVID pandemic again, I would use rapid tests and we would not be in this situation, because you need to understand that the other problem was it was the Wild West when Donald Trump was the president. I'm just going to call him out on it. And that group approved any rapid test that any human manufactured. And I can say that because the benefit is I'm Chinese by background, and I'll tell you there was a lot of fraudulent tests that came out of China. And so like a few bad apples, Nora's going to kill me. She knows I'm not good at this. What's a few bad apples like messes up I should probably use cranberries as an analogy up in Muskoka. But you get what I'm trying to say. And so it changed the whole rapid test market. Now, the other part was the governments played politics with the rapid tests. They never approved them. All right, there was no reason to not approve them. And I'll tell you that for good to 6 months, I brought in rapid tests I got access to, which is the SD biosensor tests that were made by Korea. They were not Health Canada approved. They were not US government FDA approved, but it was World Health Organization approved. And Bill Gates bought 150 million units for Africa and third world countries. So it was good for the third world countries, it was good for Bill Gates, but it wasn't good for Canada. And it wasn't good for US. And the reason was we had to buy those Abbott things from the US in order to get other stuff from them, including vaccines. So you need to understand that the game is actually piracy and using all of these things as leverage, which we know is still happening right now with the vaccines. So we had to buy the Abbott tests because they're made in America. And so we couldn't approve another test. And then when we had them, the public health departments didn't know what to do with them because you couldn't record the positive tests, right? So Greg, congratulations that you just like pushed it out. I couldn't have said it any better. Where were you 6 months ago with me on TV? Like, where have you been, right? So you need to listen to everything that Greg said is true. And including peer pressure. Don't like to say it that way, but I don't call it peer pressure. It's like you know what's right and wrong. It's like, if you want to smoke, now go stand outside, right? Like, if you don't want to do the test, wear a mask. If you want to opt out of vaccines, don't come to a Maple Leaf hockey game when we get to the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, that's your tough, right? So we need to understand that these rapid tests, here's what's good about them. If they turn positive, you are positive. And if you turn negative, you could arguably say that there was a 4% that you were negative. But here's what's good. Even if you're positive and you're asymptomatic and you test negative, it means that your viral load inside your nose caused you not to be enough to cause that test to go positive, which meant that if you had a mask on, you likely would not have spread it. So that's the reason why most of the spread, the asymptomatic world, is about 40% happens at home. And at work, people are pulling it down, like, and closed environments to eat lunch. And I've seen it, like, and so that's what causes it. So I'm a huge believer in rapid tests. And I knew that my clients were all going to gather at Christmas. I know that. I can't say how many people didn't. The only reason I didn't gather was I don't have a big family. So I gathered, but it was 3 of us. So that was really exciting for me. And we didn't have guests. So I could take my time to make whatever dinner I want and start whatever time I want. It was very liberating to know that I had no guests on Christmas Eve. So they see all the ladies are laughing because it was like the best Christmas ever. So all those who didn't have the benefit, everybody used their rapid tests to get together. And we're going to use these rapid tests. I'm working right now with the Four Seasons. I have a Bespoke Wellness Club at the Four Seasons in Toronto. And we're going to use these rapid tests to use, and there'll be a saliva one soon, Greg, so you don't need to stick it up your nose. But that's subject to Health Canada approving these approved tests in Korea and the rest of Asia, but not in Canada. So back to the whatever. And we're going to test large events like weddings. You want to come to the wedding? Spit. You want to come in and have free drinks? Spit. You want to come in and watch a football game, in a private booth? Spit. That's really what it's going to come to. So people will get used to these rapid tests. They are technically sound. The Abbott ones are technically sound. And that's what you need to just know. Get the technically sound ones. If it's too cheap, there's probably something wrong with them.
All right, I'm going to get to some specific questions. Of course, we always like to stress, vaccination, we've got to get vaccinated, keep wearing the masks, all of these kinds of things, we've got to always keep those in mind. Now, I did have one person ask, put in a question that said, I've been vaccinated, so I'm afraid my screening test will show up as positive. That's probably a Dr. Chin question. So
yeah, but Dr. Greg will answer it first. Dr. Greg knows the answer to the question.
Absolutely not. I've been vaccinated and I screened 3 times a week, and I have never had a positive yet.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the technical reason. We talk about antigens and antibodies. So let's just talk about that. So the antigen looks exactly like this. It's your virus with the spike protein. Okay, that's the antigen. The rapid test actually measures for this, and in fact, the plate on the rapid test has actually antibodies on it, and so if it actually attaches onto this, it'll turn positive because the plate has antibodies. And so when you have the antibody against this, it turns color and you get the line. All right. Now, when you've been vaccinated, you don't have the virus in you, but there will be a test to measure for antibodies soon. And so right now, there's no COVID test on Earth that will turn positive because you've been vaccinated. And if it turns positive because you've been vaccinated, it's because your vaccine did not make antibodies against a new strain. So for example, and this will dive into the AstraZeneca world. I'm gonna go there because Nora likes me in controversy. She's like, don't get into it, because I'm gonna cause her trouble. Is that there is a 66% efficacy of the AstraZeneca against the Indian strain. So if the Indian strain continues to mutate and we continue to use these rapid tests because they continue to work, you will get a positive because you have a new strain up your nose. That's it. That's basically what it is. But we're not there yet in Canada, so you cannot get a positive test for that reason.
Just another reason to keep the rapid testing going, right? So that would be the thing I would say. Now, this one came in. Oh, sorry, Kelly.
But just on that note, I also wanted to mention that a lot of businesses question us anyway when they're picking up whether or not they need to be testing if their staff are all double vaccinated.
Yeah, so for the mental, psychological, emotional safety part of it, my answer to you is no right now. Until you know there's a variant strain that's not immune against the variant, against the vaccine. And that's not forthcoming yet. Let's just vaccinate the less privileged countries that don't have vaccines, let them have them so that they don't have a mutation, and then we don't have to deal with this and we don't have to have boosters.
But if they only have one vaccine, they should definitely still be testing.
Yes, there's still a leak, especially if you had AstraZeneca up in Muskoka a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so here's a harsh one that came in, but I completely understand why it was asked. So I'm going to just read exactly what they said. We work outside in Muskoka. We have few cases here. I think this is a total waste of time. So they didn't even really ask a question, but I would suggest then the question, why should I do it?
So I think it's a great question. I think it's a very valid question. If you work outside and you're vaccinated and your colleague is vaccinated, you can prove to each other you're vaccinated, subject to public health rules that are actually antiquated based on double vaccinations, then you can leave your mask off. Now, let's just say you're both not vaccinated and the city dwellers are coming to you this summer and we're going to spread more COVID to you. And it's coming. Some of them have stayed up north and they're part of your new family now. The last time I checked, you all like to congregate to eat lunch together, and that's not 6 feet. And like my son would say, the engineer, that, you know, in the summer when we were walking, he goes, the wind is blowing this way and that person's not wearing a mask and she's talking and she has COVID. Can I get it? And I looked at him, I go, I think we could. Because it's blowing towards me, it's airborne. It's less likely because it'll blow, just like if you're in a room and you have a fan going on, it either blows back into you, which that's why it's a circular spread indoors. But usually when you're outdoors, it goes swoosh and it goes somewhere else, just like the leaves. So great question. You are welcome to not wear your mask if you've been double vaccinated, or if you haven't even been vaccinated, don't sit with anybody when you smoke or eat.
Well, I'm still going to keep wearing my mask personally. So I'm just, that's my feeling. And that's the kind of what we've been talking to, you know, and saying to people that, you know, let's just keep trying to be as safe as possible.
For the naysayers who refuse to wear it, then don't sit by each other and have lunch and smoke by yourself. Just work by yourself, be by yourself, then okay.
So, you know, the interesting thing about this is, and this is the elephant in the room for some of our businesses. They are actually afraid they're going to get a positive screen, right? And I'm trying to explain to them that a positive screen is a positive thing because then you keep the potential infection out of your workplace. But I want to throw that to Greg, is that I'm sure that you, even though, and they want to do it really quietly, they don't want people to know that they've said this because they realize that maybe, you know, doesn't really fit with the whole program. But what happens when a company says, you know, I'm afraid if I get a positive screen, my business will be shut down? Greg, did you run into that and how did you handle it? Oh, you're muted. You're on mute.
Of course, we had all of those questions come in, you know, a little bit worried about it. You know, do I want to know the answer? Well, yeah, because better to have one positive case than an outbreak. Because one positive case in your workplace is not going to shut you down. But an outbreak is going to shut you down. And we've had a lot of companies over the course of the last year that have had 10-day shutdowns, 14-day shutdowns because they've had an outbreak of 3 or 4 or 5 people in their workplace. Where did they get it from? The contact tracing says from the other employee that they were working with, because they were working side by side. So, once you tell them that, they're kind of excited about it. We had one just last week, just started doing it. Very first day they did it, one of their young female employees screened positive. She had no symptoms, not even a tickle in her throat, went for a PCR, it was confirmed she was positive. And he phoned me up and said, Greg, thank God you're giving us these kits, because I don't know what would have happened if she'd have come back to work. Because he said, I phoned her the other day and it was 6 days after this incident, and she still has no symptoms. She feels just fine. So she would have been passing it around her home, the drugstore, the grocery store, her workplace. Who knows how many people she would have infected, and that's the point of this. Let's find the one. We've said since last June. Look, we found out last June that asymptomatic carriers are a bit of an issue. We didn't know the total percentage value of how many people could be asymptomatic, but we knew they were a problem. If we'd have had this in place, if we'd have had this tool in place, where we could have screened everybody that's going to work, we would not be anywhere close to where we are today. We wouldn't have had a second wave. We wouldn't have had a third wave, because we could identify, contain, and control. And that's what we have lacked since the very beginning of this.
All right, I see some questions coming in the Q&A. I'm just going to get through some. We did have some in advance, so I just want to make sure that we've covered them all. And some of them we've already answered, I think. Like one of our rapid test recipients asked if someone already had COVID-19 and recovered, would the rapid test show them as a presumptive positive? I think, Dr. Chin, you've already said that that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen. And again, that's on the assumption. Now, in the past, like a month ago, I'd say to you that if you've been sick, you could possibly get another variant strain, but it seems that the most strongest immunity is the folks who had COVID. And I'll speak for myself. Nora knows that early on last year, this time, I was able to access antibodies tests before everybody had them, and I sent them to the US. And I had antibodies and I was asymptomatic. And a lot of my clients came in, they were quite sick in January and February. I think it was here already. And the story here is that when I did them for clients and their families, we had a positivity rate that was less than 1%. But of the positivity, so think about this, in April and May of 2020, 40% of my clients or their family members were asymptomatic. They didn't know they had COVID. And they thought it was a false positive. But in retrospect, I had data that apparently in Germany, they did a town. I went back on the literature research, but nobody said this, Greg. And so that's why I've been screaming at my clients, and Nora gets my bulletin. So she like tries to scream with me, but nobody can hear because we'll just sound like a bunch of wackos. So yeah, let's just move on and not make mistakes going on. So let's use these rapid tests, because I'm just going to use an analogy. How many of you would be willing to not have a fire alarm in your house or a carbon dioxide machine? Why do you have one? Where there's smoke, there'll be fire. You're going to ignore it? You're going to sleep through the fire alarm? This is an objective test that you can see the enemy on a cartridge. I think it's a pretty good solution. This is your fire alarm. There it is.
Yeah.
That's I laugh about these always because it has a C and a T, and you would think the C stands for COVID, but it's actually clear, and T is for test.
Control,
right?
control, Nora.
Control, and the other one is test. All right, so
bugger.
I'm going to turn to questions in the Q&A because they're starting to pile up, and I just want to mention that if I'm going to mention your name, but if you want to ask the question anonymously, just write that you don't want me to mention you, but it gives us a chance to network and see who's all getting involved. So I've got a question here from Ann Bath, and some of these questions, like I think we can answer them really quickly because we know some of the answers, but it's really good. Ask away any question. All right. So here's somebody, if a person is tested positive and then they go into isolation and then it's getting to the end, do they have to, it says get a positive result, but I think they mean a negative COVID result before they can come back to work. So I think we know the answer to that, but who wants to answer it?
I'll do it quickly. In the very beginning of life, they made you go get a negative test before you could go back. Now the government doesn't even tell you to do that because we know the PCR test can go positive for months on end while you've been fully recovered. So consider yourself non-infectious after 10 days of getting positive test.
And yet, with our guidelines under our program, we're telling, if an employee does screen positive, they are to go and book a PCR test as quickly as possible. Sometimes, like in Bracebridge, you can get those the same day and have your result within 2 days. So, and then our understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, Greg and Elaine, is that if I go get that negative COVID PCR test, then I can come right back to work. That's how we understand it, right?
Yeah, I'm giving you the practical and you guys are giving me the legal. So There you go.
Yeah. So, our message to everybody is, look, it's not your employer's business. It's, it is. They've got to keep you out of the workplace. It's not the chamber's business. You need to go and get a PCR test to confirm the screening. And then you got to follow public health guidelines, and whatever they tell you to do, you do. That's kind of the regime we live under right now. And what you don't want to do is something in that objects to public health, and then maybe get yourself into some legal battle because you knowingly, as a positive carrier, came in contact with someone and gave them COVID, and who knows where it could go from there. So you know what? You follow public health guidelines. If you screen positive, go get a public health PCR confirmatory diagnostic test, and then follow their rules and regulations. Don't follow your employers. Don't follow mine. Just follow public health rules.
And certainly when we asked that question of our health unit, Dr. Colin Lee, who is the second in command there, came back and said that, there's nothing to say if you get a positive screening, you're not going to get shut down. That every case is taken on its own merit, but they see no reason why they would shut down a business because of one positive screen. So just to throw that out there. And then the reporting question, and I have to tell everyone that we are all still learning too. And the province is often changing their mind like every second hour. So this question is an interesting one because it talks about when reporting the amount of tests completed, we don't have to say if any are positive. Well, right now, presently in our system, you just say the number of employees that you've tested. And I don't know if Greg, if you want to chime in here, but I know the province was also asking us to do a full aggregate at the end. So there would be X positive, X negative, X inconclusive. I have to stress, these are anonymous tests. Yeah. I don't know that Nora Fountain tested anything. I just know an employee tested this way, and the chambers don't know at all. So I want to really be clear on that. And also from our end right now, the only thing you're reporting back when you go into rapidtestmuskoka.com or rapidtestaurelia.com is the number of employees tested. So Greg, I don't know if you've heard anything recently on reporting.
No, I think it's what we have said to the provincial government is, the Ministry of Health in particular, who's looking for some of this data. What are you going to do with the data? It's completely useless data for you, because when someone screens presumptive positive and their employer says, go home, lock yourself in a room, phone public health, get a PCR test within 24 hours, you're now in the regulatory system that's supposed to take care of you and monitor you. Ministry of Health has absolutely nothing to do with the positive case in Aurelia. They don't get involved with that. It's local public health that gets involved with it. So the data they don't need. The only thing they need to know is how many kits is Nora giving out to people at a cost of $5 a piece or $125 for a box, just to balance the books and be able to say, we spent X number of $1 million on kits, we gave them out, and X $1 million of kits got used. So we did a good thing. That's all they need. They only need the number that we've given out and the number that have been used. But as far as the data behind that, that's not my business. It's even not the employer's business because these are self-administered. So the law actually says the only person that can make a decision on what happens is the administrator of the test. And if they're self-administered, that puts a responsibility back on the employee. They've got to go get a PCR test if they screen presumptive positive. That's it.
All right, thanks.
And who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't do that?
I would hope
You
that
know, like if I had 2 red lines come up, you know, I would never hide it and throw it in the garbage somewhere and sneak around like, you know, like I could potentially be infectious. I need to get that taken care of. No, you know, even the most unscrupulous employer or employee would have some problems because they wouldn't want to go home to their family and give it to their family or friends. So they would do the right thing, I think, in every single case.
it's an excellent answer. If you, let's see, if you get a positive, does the person still need to go for the PCR test?
Yeah.
We've answered that, and that yes, absolutely. Now, and here's a big one that came out for me really early was, have there been any false positives? And I've seen different, I know the percentage that we're going with, but I wonder if you want to address that, Elaine. I know what I want to say about it, but I'd rather hear from you. So Elaine, have there been any false positives?
So the answer to that question is depending on the test. So I don't use that Abbott test. I use SD Biosensor because I just had it. And it's 100% specific. So if you look at the product monograph, the specificity is false positives. So there is 0 false positives for my test. All of these are way above 90%. So what is the Abbott one?
No,
Over 90%. 90%.
But I think it's way higher than 90. It's like 95.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What does it say on the Abbott ones? 95?
I think it's 93 is, you know, on a sampling of 100,000 tests.
Yeah. You know what? I would say to you, I've seen people get a positive and then in the old world, wait 3 days and go get a PCR. Well, duh, it's 3 days later. And, you know, and if you don't stick it up your nose in the right place, you won't find DNA material. So, you know what? The whole idea is if you're asymptomatic and you test positive, say thank you to God and just stay in your room, get room service out of your house. Everybody feels bad for you and keeps asking you how you're feeling, and ask for beer and wine and get it sent in through the door, and just enjoy yourself for 14 days doing whatever you want inside, especially moms. Like, you take care of the kids, wash the laundry, and just send to-dos out. So that's the way you should look at it, that it's better to have a positive than not to know and then spread it to other people.
Okay, we're going to take a few more questions. Here we've got one. We're a small resort. We have a 17-year-old employee. Can they be tested or are they underage? And I've heard some interesting just takes on this, but I'd like to hear, Greg, I think I asked you this one early on, didn't I? So and your answer was?
Our advice to people, because we don't want to be the legal advice to anyone, our advice to someone is if they're under 18 years old, you probably want to ask their parents if you can screen them. However, we get more and more call now from especially home daycares who are saying, you know, can we screen the kids? Well, you know, you better get the parents' permission. And before you stick anything up their nose, I think like a 5-year-old couldn't do this because they put it up way too far. A 17-year-old could probably do it, but I think it's probably common courtesy to mom and dad, and probably saves you a lot of headaches.
Yeah, so from a medical legal perspective, nobody can stick anything up a child's nose underneath the 18 years of age, including me. So that's the answer. A 17-year-old, they know how to stick it up their nose.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, like if you've done enough of them, you know exactly how far you see the swab. So you just hold on to it and you go, I've done so many of these videos, like, you know, like some of my clients get scared using them. I go, more. He goes, how do you know? I said, just hold it where it is. And I want to see 1 centimeter from where where your hand is. And I don't want to see any more white. So I said, the last time I know, you can't touch your brain. So just keep sticking up your nose.
Yep.
And the other rule is very simple. Stick it up your nose until you want to sneeze. And then if you sneeze, perfect. Stick it on your other nose and you've got your sample.
And yet they told us, I mean, it looks scary, but it's not even as far as you'd stick a normal Q-tip. It's just put your head back, go in 5 times. It's only a couple of centimeters. So it's not even as far as you would push a normal Q-tip, at least not with the Abbott test.
Is this a shallow? Okay, so Melinda Rogers and I know each other quite well, right? She does these tests and she goes, is yours a deep dive or a shallow dive? It's like, you have to, so these are shallow dives. So it's nothing.
Another question that came in is that some businesses are worried about how much time and work it will be to test their employees. And you know what, I think I can answer this, but you can add on, is that we presume that everybody's negative. So you're not standing there and I find that they don't take 15 minutes.
Oh no, it goes positive. It will be like, boom, if anybody's ever told you. So no,
really?
I never sit there. Yeah.
It goes quickly. Oh, I didn't know that.
You know, you've seen the water track. As soon as you see it go to the other end, if that line doesn't come on the tee, you know you're negative. Because if you overwatch it 30 minutes and come back as it dries, that line will show up.
Nora, you might want to do yourself a favor and use the positive control swab that comes in the kit, and you can see how fast it turns positive.
All right, I haven't used those because we've told people to sort of ignore them. So
well, don't stick them up your nose. That's all. But you can use it.
Sandy.
Greg.
Yeah, just when I read the book and I compared to the Ontario government information, it said don't read before 15 minutes and don't read after 20 minutes. It was very strict in the guidelines.
Yeah,
trying to be a rule follower.
Well, we got 2 programs going on. We got this bus program going on too that Communitech was doing. And there was a case there where about 45 minutes later, a very faint line came under the tee.
It's over dried.
And you know what? They demanded that the person go get a PCR and it came back negative. And so, you know, but between that 15-minute and 20-minute period, there was only a red line under the C. So everything was fine. But it was later they saw that and they thought they'd phone the person. So yeah, as the doctor said, they're very, very quick. And usually what you see when the line goes across is what you're going to get at the end.
Okay, good to know.
Further to
because
that,
a lot of people have been afraid of that sudden red surge, but now you're telling me that's actually a good thing. And Kelly, you've got some questions there. So
just further to that, in terms of businesses being worried, I hear it a lot too. I don't have time. I'm going to have to hire someone just to do this because I have over 100 employees and I think, Greg, you told us a story once about, you know, different ways different businesses are doing it where and I've used that a lot with businesses. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how overwhelming it is. And perhaps subsequently, another question was, you know, do we have to screen every employee every day? Does it have to be on the same day and does it have to be the same time? So maybe, you know, we could just sort of cover that off a bit.
Okay, so let me answer the second question first. The benefits that these rapid screens have is serial screening. So continually doing it all the time so that you get this regimented routine so that in those incubation days when you're not infectious, you have a better chance of catching it really, really early if you're screening on a serial basis. So it is important to do, you don't have to do all of your employees on Monday and Thursday. You could do half on Monday, half on Tuesday, half on Thursday, half on Friday. You know, it's no big, how you break it up is not, but what is vital is that before you start this process, especially if you've got 30 or 40 employees, because it could be disruptive, and if you've got a production type of process, sit down and think of a plan. How is this going to work? How am I going to do this? So what a couple of companies have done is sat down and said that, because you can pre-fill the vials. So get somebody to go in and pre-fill the vials, write the employee's name on the side of it so that they know whose vial is what. And then when they come in the door in the morning, they pick up Joe picks up his vial, swabs his nose, sticks it in, breaks it off, sets it back down. And then they have the supervisor there who's equipped with PPE to finish off the test so that they know Joe's test. So Joe carries on and goes to his workstation, and it maybe takes 25 minutes or 30 minutes or so for the test to complete itself. But it was a big disruption for a lot of businesses until they sat back and said, how can we make this work with our business? Because that's what we have to do. And we don't want it to be intrusive, because then we'll stop doing it. And we know the importance of doing it. So sit back and think about how it would work in your setting. Maybe you do half the employees. Maybe you do, a fifth of your employees every day of the week. And you just keep rotating it around. But you got to find that balance. It's small organizations or smaller where you got 5, 10 people, pretty easy. My box sits out on the front counter. Staff come in, they do it all by themselves. They leave it there for me to make sure that I can see whether they can hang around with me or not.
Thank you. And further to that then, and I know we've spoken about this possibility for the future, but can my employees take this home and test before coming to work?
We have a few do that, especially construction. Your construction case, or your question earlier about working outside. Yeah, there's no question it's much safer to work outside. But we've had a number of construction companies who have employees who work outside who have had outbreaks, and it's shut down construction sites, all kinds of things. So what a couple of them do, because they don't often see their employee goes home and goes off to a job site in some other community. They'll pre-fill the vial. The buffering agent is as safe inside the plastic vial as it inside the plastic bottle that it's coming out of. And long as they're sealed up and they don't let it leak out, they sometimes will take, if an employee is going to be working, in another location for a week, they'll give them 2 kits, tell them to do it on Tuesday and Friday or something like that. And then a lot are taking it home on the weekends and screening themselves before they come into work on Monday morning.
And I think we would just add to that, then we would encourage anybody that might be doing that to make sure that they watch the video and take the training that happens for any supervisor before they're doing it themselves. So
that's a must. Yeah.
A must. Yeah.
Absolutely a must. We have heard of larger companies doing that, about having their employees test at home before they even come into work. And I hope that we can actually get to that point where we're allowed to advise that. Right now, we can't. We have to say that, you need to have someone watch the fact that you've taken the test. But as Greg said earlier, who would not, who would lie about that? But that's also, maybe it's a matter of looking at your own workplace culture, if that's the case. If, maybe you need to make it clear to employees that if they do test positive, perhaps you have some own decisions of your own to make about, is this a paid sick day? Because I would hope that, if someone came that works for me, then they would definitely get paid if they have to go home. So I think the chances of somebody lying about that, as you said, they're not going to want to spread it to friends and family. So I hope we get to that point, because to me, that makes so much more sense before you even come into the workplace. So it'd be really interesting to see that happen. So I think we've covered off the questions. I'm just looking to see here. You know what? I want to ask a question. So I've been telling people, so tell me if I'm wrong from the beginning, because we're also learning, right? So we test here in our office on Mondays and Thursdays. Right now, it's really only the 2 of us. And the way I've explained it to people, I said that, so Brittany and I test on Monday, and we test again on Thursday. And if on Thursday, I come up with a positive screening, my understanding is that I haven't been shedding the virus since Monday.
Probably.
That I'm just becoming infectious now. So I have not been infecting my workplace. Is that a true statement? Elaine, you want to burst my bubble, or?
You have to, I want Greg to answer that question.
Well, what I find interesting about that is I've done a lot of research on the antigen screening, and Doctor talked about it earlier, that what an antigen is compared to the virus or the viral contagion itself. So a PCR test looks for the virus, where an antigen screening looks for the protein associated with that virus. And so you actually have the opportunity to detect the protein before you actually become contagious. Rapid screens have in some, not on every case, but in some cases have actually detected it before a PCR test would have detected the virus, because the viral load wasn't down into the system where they do the PCR test by the time they did that. So, you know, I think there's a possibility, but as Dr. Chin said, if you're that early, especially Nora, you go from, you know, Monday to Thursday, you've been wearing a mask in any event. Everything's right here. So you've been breathing into that mask and likely not spreading it as you would if you had a full viral load.
That's great, Dr. Greg.
That's a good answer. I know, you know, it leads into something else that I know Kelly Haywood wants to talk about. And I know is a question that, despite what we're telling everyone, we're still finding people are very confused between symptomatic and asymptomatic. So Kelly, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I've been asked this too. So by people who are picking up the tests, if someone's tested asymptomatic, you know, positive, how long can they be asymptomatic? Like, there's a concern that they may be asymptomatic for a long time, and that could be why employees don't want to test.
So you need to treat the idea of asymptomatic and symptomatic in the same context of contagiousness. The only reason you're asymptomatic is you didn't mount a high inflammatory response against the virus. That's the only reason. But if you're asymptomatic, you are most likely still as contagious, obviously a little less than somebody who's sick. And most of the spread happens before you're super sick. So that's the worst part, right? The first 7 days when you're sick, it's like when you get chicken pox, the kids, it's like you've missed the window, and it's a virus. So, you know, by the time they have the rash, whoever they've been around, all those kids have gotten it. So, you know, when the moms send them over, when they have lots of rash over the body, it's too late. You should let them play together earlier.
So the asymptomatic cases they may not ever become symptomatic, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm in a perfect example of that, right?
It would still go away, right?
Yeah, I was asymptomatic throughout, because the only reason I know I had COVID was because I tested positive for antibodies in April, end of April. So I got it sometime. And you know what? Maybe I was sick in January, February. And you know what? In January, February in a family practice office, you get colds and coughs. I don't know. And I think that's part of the reason why I didn't get very sick, aside from the fact that Nora and I follow everything in my book, right, Nora? Yes, say yes.
I'm muted.
And we take care of ourselves. And I probably have gotten similar coronaviruses. So in fact, in some weird way, I'm slightly protected compared to somebody who's not been exposed to a lot of coronaviruses. So I think, Kelly, that's my answer for you.
Yeah.
It is a really good question, though, about like, how long do you stay asymptomatic? Like, do you just go on forever being asymptomatic?
Yeah, 40% of people do.
So Charlene's put in another question. The video says twice per week. Is that the preferred testing schedule? Now, I think Greg talked about, you know, if you're on shifts and things like that, but we are saying do it at least twice a week. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
So given that Greg did that, it's like the only reason is like what you want to be able to say is, say you got infected on the day that you did the first test. By day 3, you usually have some viral load in your nose. That's why. So I like Mondays and Thursdays because you've had your party weekend. And then Thursday, don't go home with it to start the party weekend. So I love Mondays, Thursdays, or Tuesday, Fridays.
I tell people not to be a serial killer, be a serial tester,
Mhm.
because we have had some people have said, well, we're just going to do it once a week or like once every couple of weeks. And actually CDL, I talked about Creative Destruction Lab earlier, has some really interesting stats about if you just do it once in a while, like willy-nilly, what happens with your numbers. But if you are testing at least twice a week, you're testing regularly, that you'll take those numbers down. Otherwise, it goes from like 0 to 20 days. If you're infecting 2.6 people on day 0, by 20 days, you have infected 5,700 people.
So the
so
rule
it's-
is, yeah, you're correct. And the rule is really, are you doing a screening program or are you doing a testing program? Right? So if you're doing a screening program, you don't have exemptions, right? Just like at the airport, you're screening for guns, okay? If you're doing a testing program, which I was doing in my office, because I felt we were like loaded on PPE. So I would only test it if I know somebody rolled in here that was tested, was asymptomatic, came in, we were on full PPE, and I do a testing program versus a screening program in my office. Now we don't because we're vaccinated. So I have 2 boxes sitting there.
But even after vaccination, we still, well, maybe not double vaccination, but it'll be interesting to see if we still need to rapid test. I think the jury's out on that one. I think we have time for one more question that's just come in. And this is a really, and I understand why they're asking for clarification on this one, because we're all hiring summer students. We really depend on summer students here. So the question is, can you clarify, if one has associates that are less than 18 years old, what is the employer's responsibility if the associate administers the rapid test his or herself, receiving permission from their guardian to participate in the rapid testing program? So I think you answered it that, under 18, you can't stick something up a child's nose. I think you said that very clearly, Dr. Chin.
Right.
But you can watch, they can self-administer themselves. And Greg, I think you said you would prefer that we have permission from their parents.
If they get permission from their parent or guardian, by 17, 16 years old, 15 years old, they've got a lifetime of experience of picking their nose. They know exactly how to do it. So you know what? I think they're probably safe to do it on their own. I wouldn't give it to a 5 or 6 year old and let them do it. But I think a teenager has picked their nose enough that they know exactly how far in they can go.
It's interesting you say that, because one of our members that is already involved in the testing, she wrote to me today and said, I'm not going to come because this is so straightforward. Nora, we've got this. A 5-year-old could do it. So I want to share that's some of the feedback that's come back from some of our members. So unless I don't see anything else being dropped in the Q&A, and unless there's something else like suddenly that appears in the chat, otherwise I think we can wrap up. But know that we're here. I'm glad that all of our chamber CEOs are here on the screen. Remember, we're going to have Sandy has a question. Unmute, Sandy.
New at this whole Zoom thing. Yeah. No, I just wanted to know if Greg had any experiences of businesses getting a false positive. People always worry about that. You've done thousands and thousands of tests. I was just curious.
Yeah, we've had 80,000 reports, not 85,000 reports. We've had 38 presumed positives who have all been confirmed positive with a PCR test. We have had no false positives at all out of 80. Well, it'd be 85,000 reported screens.
Perfect. I need to be able to tell people that.
I'm not even sure public health has that record with PCR tests.
They don't, but they don't want to say that. They don't
No,
want to say a lot of things.
That's a great
Just
answer.
listen to Dr. Greg, everybody. He's now been authorized extensionally from me that he knows what he's talking about, and talk to Dr. Greg.
If that was the only way all you had to do to get into the Innovation Health Group, I'd be extremely worried. but I'm glad to hear all of this.
Nora, when I come up north, you're going to have to invite me to meet with Greg and the person, and we'll have to have 3-dimensional water.
Yeah, we're going to do that. It was my mayor who said in an interview with the media, God help us if Greg is now giving medical advice, but there it is.
All right, so we all have a link to this recording. You can request it or we'll send it out. Remember, book your test pickup time, your screening test pickup time at rapidtestmuskoka.com, or if you're in Orillia, rapidtestorillia.com. Some people were asking about reporting. You just go back into the reporting tab. I do it after we test Mondays and Thursdays and say, yep, tested 2 employees. So that's easy to do. I know, Dr. Chin, you've got to run it back into your meeting. So I want to make sure everybody gets a couple of last words. Any last comments?
Yes, you're very lucky to have Nora. She's exceptional.
All of these ladies and Greg.
I was very happy that she took a bull by the horn. And as you know, she's done some exceptional things for your community, and that's who she is. So I'm happy to help her out. She's my pal. And you guys have a safe summer. I'm sorry that my city dwellers are coming to you, but stick those things up their nose.
Okay, thank you for that. Greg, any final thoughts from you?
I just want to thank you, of course, and Sandy, and of course Kelly for leading the way up there to make sure that things are going to be safe and that people are going to feel safer. It's, you know, this is a really easy thing to do. It's not intrusive. And if this is all we have to do to maybe help keep us safe and have a relatively normal summer, you know, imagine what Dr. Chin's got to do this summer and take care of all those sick people coming up from Toronto. You know, give her a break, stick it up their nose, make sure you're not sending anybody needlessly to Dr. Chin this summer.
All right, our chamber leaders, Brenda of the Bracebridge Chamber, do you have some last thoughts?
I do. I just want to say that we have been testing in our office, and the morale of the staff has changed. It really has given everybody a breath of relief. Just knowing, like we've said 100 times on this call, you're not bringing it home to your family. You're keeping each other safe at the workplace. And like we've talked about, it tickles when it goes up your nose. You're not going up super far. It's really easy to administer. And so I really encourage all business owners to provide this for their employees, because the mental health piece is huge on this. And I've seen it with our staff and myself. I feel better because I know that we're all keeping each other safe. So that's my last thought. Thank you.
It's great. There are some Q&As still coming in, and I'll let those people know that I'm going to capture those, and I'll make sure we get those answered to you offline. So don't worry about it. Sandy, it's your turn.
Sorry, I missed. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I missed the beginning. I thought I was on mute again. Sorry, I missed the start, but I'm really great to have Greg and Dr. Chin help us today. I know our chamber, and I think the others have a little poster that you're getting that you can put in your business too that says our staff are participating in that, and we're hoping that's going to keep customers happy also.
Do you have that handy, or I'd have to run across the room to grab it, but you can show it because it's quite Muskoka-ish.
I don't know if you can see it. Is it focus? No, there we go.
A little bit.
Close.
A little bit. Brittany,
Yeah, no.
you-
Anyway, it's got our Buddy the raccoon with a blueberry mask on, following the same theme of other things we're doing, and it says, welcome our staff Oh, you got it. She's got it.
There you go.
So you can see that, you know, our staff are taking part in this. So that's about consumer confidence, and we think it's a great message to get out there. Kelly, did you have a final word?
Yeah, just quickly, please share this with your colleagues, anyone that you're talking to that says, you know, it will be on all of our Facebook pages. We can also send you the link. If there's portions of this webinar that you want us to capture and send you snipped down, we'd be happy to do that as well. To the previous point around consumer confidence, obviously, all of our chambers in Muskoka and Orillia will be doing a very significant campaign promoting businesses who do take part in this. So I highly recommend you take part in it. I highly recommend you encourage your neighbors and your peers to do so. And finally, I have been telling a lot of employers that if they want to really encourage their employees to do it, maybe developing like incentifying your employees. So offering, you know, a can of local beer at every Friday if they do it. You know, instead of bullying them to take part in the test. Incentivize them. This is important for your business. It's important for our community, and it's a very simple act. So I really appreciate those of you who have joined us, and I hope that you'll share it with your colleagues.
So for those of you who joined us today, we know you're going to have more questions as this goes forward. Check out rapidtestmuskoka.com. Look at the FAQ section. Reach out to anyone here that you see on the call to your chamber. Feel free to talk to us directly. Ask for the recording from today. And of course, I want to leave you with my final thoughts. Test twice a week, become a serial tester. We have 100,000 tests in stock, and we are ordering more. Please get vaccinated as soon as you can. If you don't know where to find that online link, talk to your chambers, because it is happening. You can get your vaccination in Huntsville. There's a Bracebridge close by in Simcoe. So please, let's get ourselves vaccinated. Let's get to that 60-70% that they're saying that we need to get open again. Remember, what we're talking about is not a replacement for vaccinations, mask wearing, hand washing. Rapid testing is another great layer of protection as we all work to get us open again. And it works best when we work this together. So do what Kelly says, share it with others. Let's get everybody doing this. Let's get us open again. Thank you to our panelists and attendees. Be well, be kind, stay safe. It works best when we work it together, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.